wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Good morning, all of my She Became Visible people. I am coming to you this beautiful sunny day from Arizona, where the high today will be 73, and it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful day. And I'm sorry for all of you who are going through the weather stuff that's going on. But I want to talk to you today, and I want to give you a heads up that today is a very, it could be a triggering topic for many of you because we're going to be talking about abuse in religion. And the reason I am bringing this into She Became Visible is because I just last weekend attended Restore 2025, a conference restoring faith in God and the church. It was held in Chandler, Arizona, and it is primarily the work of Julie Royce. And I want to start out by saying that I am not a religious person. I would probably describe myself as an agnostic. It's really a matter of my priorities in the time I have to think about what's going on. And I want to think about what's going on in the reality of the life that I know, which is the life that I am living currently upon this earth. I don't have any memory of a past life. I don't have any information that can be verified of a future life. Therefore, I want to concentrate on the life that I have knowledge of, which is the life that I'm currently living. That's where I stand. Now, I grew up in a Methodist family. My family's family were all a believer in Jesus and probably a more Protestant Methodist belief. And I believed in Jesus Christ, not really knowing a lot about the entire atonement thing. As a child, you just kind of grow up with the knowledge that you're given. You're taught to pray, so I prayed. You're taught to love Jesus, so I loved Jesus. But I didn't have any knowledge to back up those beliefs. And so the more knowledge that I have acquired as an adult, I have chosen to not rely on unsustainable information, unprovable information. And what I have seen in religion is more abuse and power and autocracy than I see a truly loving, giving community. And that's unfortunate for me. And I applaud those of you who have found comfort in your religious community. But the reason that I attended the Restore conference with Julie Royce, who is an evangelical, God and Jesus Christ believing person, is because her purpose is to bring to light the abuse that is being done in the religious community of evangelicalism. And she concentrates 100% on the evangelical world. And when I went up and talked to her, I asked her if she had ever done a podcast or a YouTube on the abuse in the Mormon church. And she said, no, that's not my tribe. That's not who I know. And so I just stick with what I know, which is evangelical. So the reason I am bringing this topic up on my She Became Visible platform is because my whole mission statement is to encourage women to take back their autonomy, take back their life, and to tell their own truths. And part of that is the sexual abuse that is not only SA, but also power abuse and the pushing down of women that I see in the religious communities. So that is part of She Became Visible, is by taking back your power, taking back your purpose, and becoming loud and speaking up for those other sisters that have suffered through abuse or some kind of church hurt, as Julie says. Now, let me bring this into, oh, let's see what we got here. Okay, so this is a picture that I got of Julie and me, and also one of my favorite speakers, Dr. Diane Landberg, and she is amazing. And if you would go to YouTube and just type in Diane Landberg and listen to some of her YouTube presentations, she is a psychologist. She was trained in the 70s, and back when women would go to their clergy and they would try to tell their clergy that they had suffered some kind of abuse from someone in power, a male person in power and authority, they were brushed aside. And so somehow she had a young woman come to her stating that she had been actually abused by her father. And when she went to, and Diane was new, she was young, she was still kind of going through her training as a psychologist. So she went to her authority and she said, "What should I do? I have never heard of this before." And I love that she said that, because as in my case, I have never experienced any kind of abuse besides just the typical misogyny that you get in a patriarchal society. But Diane was unaware of this as well. And when this young girl was telling her her story, she didn't know what to do. And so she went to her authority and she said, how should I handle this? And they told her, these women, they're hysterical. They make this stuff up. Just go, let it go. Tell her, no, this didn't happen. It's not true. And this young student of psychology, Diane at the time, chose to believe the woman and not her male authority. And her focus became treating people with PTSD, which was not even a diagnosis at the time. It wasn't even it didn't have a name. The post-traumatic syndrome didn't have a name until the 80s. And so young men that were coming back from war, she dealt a lot with Vietnam vets who were dealing with PTSD and other people that had gone through traumatic experiences. And it didn't even have a label until the 80s. And so Diane worked with a lot of these people because she believed their story. So it was a beautiful conference. But what I wanted to say was the reason I went to it is because, to me, it's not about the religion. It's about the bringing awareness of the abuse in the religious community. And so I can look past the testimonies that these people that have suffered abuse, that they have their faith, that they have in God still. I can look past that and listen strictly to their stories of abuse by power, people who have been given power, and people who are not listening to these sufferers. And so this is why I went to this. And I love what Julie is doing. But here's the deal. So let me read you the bio of Julie. She says, Julie Royce is a veteran investigative reporter and founder of the Royce Report and the Restore Conference. Julie previously hosted a national talk show on the Moody Radio Network called Up for Debate. She also has worked as a TV reporter for a CBS affiliate in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and as a news writer for WGN TV and Fox 32 in Chicago. Julie's articles have appeared in Christianity Today, Religion News Service, World Magazine, and the Religion Post. She and her husband, Neil, live in the Chicago area and have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. So she's a fabulous, her Roy's report is very well done. And because of her investigative journalism skills, she's a very good podcast host. So, but she has had people, one of my favorites was also, and the 2025 Restore Conference has not been released on video yet, but it will be. And when it is released, I'm going to highlight Dr. David Pooler. His talk was amazing. And Dr. David Pooler is director of the Adult Clergy Sexual Abuse Advocacy and Research Collaborative at Baylor University in the School of Social Work. He brings insights about adult clergy sexual abuse through research and his clinical practice with survivors. Dr. Poole has a BA in psychology and religion from Lee University and earned MSW and PhD in social work at the University of Louisville. And so his talk about the work, the statistics, the data that he has collected on clergy sexual abuse is amazing. And so I can't wait for the 2025 Restore Conference to come out so that I can bring that to your attention. But what I want to talk to you today about is, because Julie is an evangelical and that is her tribe and that is what she deals with, I come from a background in Mormonism. And again, I have never experienced any kind of clergy sexual abuse personally, but the amount of abuse that goes on in the Mormon church, I am going to guess, and I have no data to back this up, but it probably makes the evangelical abuse minor in comparative. So it is absolutely, and of course, a lot of this is because the Mormon church is set up so differently than how other religions are set up. Each religion, I mean, if you are a pastor in a Christian religion and you don't particularly like the community that you're serving in, you can leave and go somewhere else and open up an entirely different church, and start an entirely different community and congregation. But in the Mormon church, everything is centered from Salt Lake City. The basis is set up in Salt Lake City. Even in the Catholic Church, even though they have the Vatican and they have the Pope, each of the dioceses are individual. And so each individual diocese can be, say there's some kind of abuse, it will be individually sued or individually held liable rather than taking the entire Catholic Church in. But each congregation in the Mormon church is not an individual. It is all centralized out of Salt Lake City, Utah. So when these things happen in the various congregations throughout the world, it all goes back to Salt Lake, and which makes it, I think, more difficult to hold people responsible because the people at the top are still having the final word. And that's very scary. But so I wanted to show you a couple of clips comparing what Julie is doing and what's happening in the Mormon church. And let me add this back to the stage. There is an amazing organization called Floodlit, FLOODLIT.org, floodlit.org. And this is an example of their page. If you go to their page, and they are keeping track of sexual abuse. And what I love about them is this is not just people that have been accused. They actually have to be charged legally with the abuse. And I don't know if you can see it here. Don't think I can make it any bigger, but 587 offenders in 45 US states and 6 countries, 271,967,000 the LDS Church paid or agreed to pay after leaders allegedly failed to report abuse or support victims. 65 ongoing criminal cases, 110 ongoing civil cases. That's just some of the information that they have. And so I'm going to be going back and referencing Floodlit, but they are taking donations, and they are also taking information. If you have information on any kind of clergy or people in authority, and authority in the Mormon Church goes right down to your Sunday school teacher or the people that are involved in teaching the youth, that would be considered authority. And so if you have any information, you can turn that information over to Floodlit. So, but let me show you some of what Julie is doing to get us started.
Gateway Church founder Robert Morris was famous for urging people to tithe 10% of their income to the church. Morris always said he didn't need the money, he just didn't want people to miss out on the blessing of God and become vulnerable to Satan. Well, I've discovered some information over the past several weeks that calls into question whether Robert Morris was really so altruistic in his motives. Turns out Robert Morris owns multiple multi-million-dollar homes, including a 370-acre ranch in Jacksboro, Texas, worth at least $8 million. So how did Robert Morris get so rich? I've asked Gateway Church to release his salary over the past couple of decades, but they've refused to do so. If you gave 10% of your income to Gateway Church over many years, wouldn't you want to know just how Robert Morris got so rich? If you'd like to read the full article, I encourage you to go to the link in the description.
So that's one of the things. And the reason why I bring that out is because when we're talking, a lot of the abuse that Julie talks about is more clergy abuse, sexually or something like that. But she also points out the amount of monetary abuse, because it is also hidden, and it is also part of the hierarchy and the abuse from people who are just loving and kind and believing in this idea that if I give money to these people, I will be blessed by God. And again, the reason why the Mormon Church is not often in the news, although it is now, because of money situation. They were just recently sued by SEC and had a $5 million penalty charged against them for having over 13 shell companies and hiding their money that is being turned into investments. So it is starting to come out, but the Mormon Church claims that they do not pay their clergy, that it is a lay clergy. So when you have a congregation that is known as a ward in the Mormon Church, you will have a bishop and 2 counselors, and they do not receive a salary. So any money that is taken in from the church in the form of tithing or donations is sent directly to Salt Lake. And so you don't have the opportunity for bishops in the Mormon Church to personally receive any kind of payment and the abuse that you'll see in the evangelical world. However, the people at the top in Utah are paid a salary, and the top 15 receive a over 6-figure salary. And these are men that usually have very high income businesses. They have retirements, they have 401ks, but they profess that because of the amount of time that they willingly donate to the church in the position of being an apostle or a member of the first presidency, that they need to be compensated for their work. But the reality is, they are not only monetarily compensated, but they have other things paid: their housing, their electrical bills, their transportation, their travel, their children are given free educations. There's so many things that are paid for by the tithing donations of widows and struggling families and new converts in Africa that are giving these white, prominent, wealthy men in Utah a very comfortable salary that allows them to buy summer homes and second homes and other things like that. So it's hidden way better than the evangelical pastors are able to hide. So that's it. And because they have that much power, and because there is this central closed system in Utah, they are able to monetarily pay people off to stay quiet. And that is what the church is currently doing. So let's talk about abuse. Now, this is one of my favorite podcasters and influencers. He goes by the moniker Nemo the Mormon. He has just recently been excommunicated for the work that he does as an influencer. Let me show you what he points out about abuse.
And he's going to keep getting brought up. But he said in a couple of conferences ago,
abuse constitutes the influence of the adversary. It is a grievous sin. As president of the church, I affirm the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ on this issue. Let me be perfectly clear. Any kind of abuse of women, children, or anyone is an abomination to the Lord. The Savior will not tolerate abuse, and as his disciples, neither can we.
He was very firm. We don't tolerate abuse. We don't tolerate abuse. The church isn't very good at defining what abuse is or talking about what abuse looks like in our communities. It's very easy to say abuse is bad. Yeah, we all agree abuse is bad. Do you want to give me any sort of heads up on what abuse in my community might look like so I can watch out for it and stop it, perhaps?
So what he's pointing out is the current prophet of the church, 100-year-old Russell Nelson, claims over the pulpit that this church does not tolerate abuse. However, if you were to Google AP Bisbee, Arizona child abuse, you would be able to read about a case of a man in Bisbee, Arizona that was working for the Immigration, Homeland Security, Border Patrol. That's what it is. And he went to his clergy in the Mormon church. It would be his bishop. And he admitted freely, I am abusing my daughter. I am having sexual relationships with my daughter. And the bishop said, oh, wow. Okay. Let me make a phone call. And so he called what they have in the Mormon church. He called the helpline. And the helpline is actually staffed by volunteers who turn over the calls to lawyers. And the lawyer's main concern is keeping this quiet and keeping the church's name out of headlines. And so they were able to go back and tell the bishop, look, don't call the police. Don't tell anybody about this. Just work with this man and see if you can get him to stop. And so he went through, if I am not incorrect, 3 bishops, one of whom was a doctor who is lawfully mandated in the state of Arizona to report abuse. As a doctor, he is legally required to report abuse in the state of Arizona, but he did not because he used his bishop clergy privilege rights to not abuse it. This man went on to then abuse his brand new baby girl. And when this came to the attention finally of someone, and the AP News got a hold of it, this man was finally arrested and committed suicide while he was being held in jail. So this came to the news and AP reported on it. The church denied it. And the church, even though this young girl was able to retain a lawyer, and they sued the church and the state of Arizona. And the church, because they are so wealthy, we are talking over $250 billion. They have more money than the Gates Foundation. And because they have so much money, they were able to go back and win a lawsuit saying these men had clergy privileges. They were not responsible to report this horrible sexual abuse that was going on. The reason why they found out about it is because this man was actually putting videos of him abusing these children on the internet. Someone in Sweden, I think it was, saw it and then reported it to Homeland Security. And that's how it was finally revealed. But the church paid the people they needed to pay. The bishops were never held responsible. The wife did I think it was 2 years in prison. The children have been put into foster care, but the church never was held responsible for not reporting this abuse. So this is what the Mormon church does when they stand up and say, we don't tolerate abuse. What they're saying is, stop it. Stop it. But if you do it, we'll pay everybody off so that the church doesn't have to be responsible. So let me also bring to your attention, this is very interesting because I have a personal connection to this.
This is KGW News at 11.
And happening right now, a lawsuit against a former Wesleyan doctor is growing. 29 alleged victims now say that the doctor sexually abused them. Tonight, Catherine Cook spoke with 5 of those women. They wanted to share their stories in hopes of empowering others to come forward.
First off, this is all uncomfortable for me to share.
All of these women.
When I was assaulted, I thought that I was alone. I thought that there was something wrong with me. I thought I had misread things.
Share a common bond.
That I just felt this feeling that I couldn't have been the only one.
They all say they were sexually abused.
I hope that people can put those pieces together for themselves and begin to heal.
And they all accuse former Wesleyan doctor David Farley of abusing them.
Get him removed from society because you don't need a medical license to abuse people.
In October, the Oregon Medical Board revoked Farley's medical license, citing unprofessional or dishonorable conduct and gross repeated acts of negligence. Farley practiced at Wesleyan Family Health Center, which he started in 1993. In August, Farley retired. In this letter to patients, he mentioned deep regret, sadness, and a swollen heart, and said his decision to retire was due to multiple personal circumstances.
He was hurting everyone, everyone from small children to much older than me.
Lisa Pratt was Farley's patient for 5 years. She met him through her church community and says that's one way Farley gained trust and groomed his alleged victims. She began asking other women about their experiences with Farley and discovered similar stories. Shortly after, she learned about the medical board's investigation.
As a mother of 3, I just could not rest until something happened. And so I knew I had to speak up, even though this is so hard to do.
Lisa and other women reported Farley to Wesleyan police. The department says their investigation is active and ongoing, but wouldn't share any specifics about the case. So far, 29 women have united in a civil suit filed against Farley, seeking $290 million in damages.
All of these women had not come forward. Farley would still be out there right now doing the same thing.
Attorneys say they've spoken with nearly 70 alleged victims. They hope others will find the strength to come forward.
Our goals are, first and foremost, to get our clients healing, and secondly, to get him off the street. And if we accomplish that and nothing else, that's a huge win.
Farley's attorney declined to comment on pending litigation. The suit also names Wesleyan Family Health Center, Legacy Meridian Park Hospital, and Providence Health and Services Oregon. Farley was not employed by the hospitals, but had privileges to care for his patients who were admitted to Providence Willamette Falls Medical Center. Neither hospital would comment on pending litigation. Since retiring, state medical records show Farley moved to St. Anthony, Idaho, near the Utah border. That brings little comfort to these women who want to see Farley brought to justice.
He is a serial predator, and he won't stop until someone stops him.
Catherine Cook, KGW News.
Okay, so my personal relationship is I heard about Dr. Farley, and again, one of the most dangerous things about religious communities is people believe that because people in your community are God-fearing, they believe in Jesus Christ, you think, oh, these people are honest. These people are kind. These people would never do anything to hurt another human because that's not Christ-like behavior. So there is a trust element that predators and abusers take advantage of in these religious communities. And so they also refer each other. They want to keep everything in the community. So I heard about Dr. Farley, and we had just recently moved to, we were living in where had we had moved from the country. We were near Mount Hood, and we had moved back into the suburbs. And so I needed a new doctor for my youngest son that was severely disabled, and he had special needs. And I needed to find a doctor that could keep up the routine that we had for his medical care. And Dr. Farley was recommended. And so I started taking my son to Dr. Farley. And so Dr. Farley was a family doctor. He was not an OBGYN, but he did a lot of births, and he did a lot of OBGYN type of medical care. And but because he was a family doctor, he also treated everyone. And so he was treating my son, and my son just needed medications and things like that. But Dr. Farley said, you should come out, you should come over, and you should bring all of your family to see me. And I'm like, no, I kind of like to keep my medical care separate from my children's medical care. So I never did, but I always trusted him. And I liked him. He was a great guy. And I was astonished when I found about these abuse cases. However, the sad thing is, even though his medical license was revoked in the state of Oregon, he was not ever convicted, even though over 70, I think there's even more than that now, have accused him of this abuse. But this is what happens, ladies. You're not believed. And it takes each other. If it takes that one woman to become vocal for the other abuse victims to say, that happened to me. Thank you, sister. I will now stand with you. And he has left the state of Oregon. In this particular newscast that you saw, it stated he was living in Idaho. He is now living in Nephi, Utah, and he is a full-on member of the congregation, or the ward, as known as the Mormon Church. And so nothing has been done. Besides, he lost his license, but he's still holding a what they call a calling in the ward, and he is mingling. He is mingling with all of the people. They probably have no knowledge of his past, and that is the danger. Let me show you another one.
Years after the Me Too movement brought to light a wave of allegations of sexual misconduct in Hollywood and on Capitol Hill, some are calling for a similar national reckoning in a surprising field, medicine. Sexual misconduct by doctors is a rare occurrence, but when it happens, it casts a dark shadow over a profession built on trust. For the past several months, Spotlight on America has been digging into doctor discipline files state by state, and we uncovered dozens of incidents of impropriety. We were surprised to discover that discipline in many of these cases wasn't as automatic as you might expect. In this report, we introduce you to victims who say their doctor preyed on female patients for years. And we peel back the curtain on a system designed to hold physicians accountable when they cross the line.
We want to warn you, some of the content in this story is graphic. There are secrets every woman keeps, but at some point, even the darkest of them can bubble to the surface. That's what happened to Lisa Pratt and her best friend Katie Medley in the summer of 2020, when something both had buried deep was revealed with a single question.
I'm like, did you ever have any weird experiences with Dr. Farley? Her face basically went white, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, hey, I'm not the only one.
When she hits you with that question,
I felt like I was going to pass out. I felt just hot and flushed.
Lisa and Katie had trusted the same Oregon physician for years. He delivered their children and provided their routine care. During multiple visits, they both claim, though, he was sexually inappropriate with them. And they're not alone.
For chronic neuropathic pain.
Pratt and Medley are among more than 100 women suing this man, Dr. David Farley, for sexual misconduct they allege took place in this small family practice outside Portland. Court documents detail graphic allegations that Farley forced some patients to strip naked. Others, including minors, were allegedly subjected to unnecessary pelvic and breast exams, ungloved rectal exams, while others allege he photographed their genitals on his cell phone.
what did you notice that sort of changed your mindset of this guy might not be exactly what I think?
When I look back, there were a lot of little red flags. I was in for my baby's 2-week appointment, and He asked me how breastfeeding was going, and I said, great, everything's going wonderfully. And then he proceeded to walk over and stick his face directly like on my breast.
The worst experience of assault that I had with Dr. Farley was a pelvic exam during which he just sexually assaulted me with his ungloved hand, and it wasn't a pelvic exam at all.
Medley and Pratt took their complaints to the Oregon State Medical Board, the agency in charge of disciplining doctors. It initially allowed Farley, whose attorneys did not respond to our repeated attempts for comment, to voluntarily withdraw from practicing medicine without admitting any wrongdoing, pending an investigation. Weeks later, his license was revoked by the board.
If it weren't for us coming forward, his license would not have been revoked. He would have been able to quietly step away.
So you're just sort of collateral damage until they put something out?
Yes. Yeah.
How's that feel?
Awful. It hurts.
It's absolutely devastating.
And it's not unique to Oregon. A Spotlight on America investigation dug through doctor discipline records nationwide going back a few years. We found dozens of incidents of sexual misconduct by physicians from coast to coast, as well as evidence that some state medical boards failed to take quick or strong action to hold doctors accountable.
It is outrageous that the medical boards aren't doing a better job.
Dr. Sidney Wolf is the founder of the health research group at Public Citizen, a consumer advocacy group in Washington, D.C. He's been raising the alarm about sexual misconduct in medicine for years.
Okay. So can you imagine taking your daughter, your young daughter, to a doctor who is funny and happy and trusted in the community, has such a great reputation, was holding a position of authority at the church, only to find out later that he had sexually abused that young girl and that nothing was done. That's the sad part, that nothing was done. And I love that women are speaking out. And I would love to know how those women are being treated in their community. But let me show you this, because I think the important thing is there seems to be a huge correlation between abuse and money. It's part of the power structure. First, they ask for your money, and then they start taking your daughters and your wives because there's more power in that. It's as old as time. Every single cult, every single system starts out with, I will acquire your land, your home. Now I will take all of your property, your money, and now I will take your women. And then I have all of the authority. And this is true in the religious community as well. Let me just show you a little bit of this.
Religion has been a cornerstone in shaping civilizations and guiding cultures across the globe. But beyond their spiritual influence, some religious institutions have quietly built vast financial empires that rival some of the world's largest corporations. These churches not only lead their followers in faith, but also manage immense wealth, owning vast properties, funding large-scale humanitarian efforts, and strategically investing in industries that extend their influence far beyond the spiritual realm. From priceless art collections to sprawling real estate, these institutions have accumulated fortunes that shape both the religious and financial worlds. In this video, we'll explore the 7 richest churches in the world and uncover how they've amassed their incredible wealth. Stick around as we dive deep into their financial portfolios and charitable missions. And if you enjoy learning about the intersection of faith and finance, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more fascinating insights into the world's most powerful institutions. Number 1, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, often referred to as the LDS or Mormon Church, is not just a religious institution, it is a financial juggernaut. In 2023, the church's wealth surged to a staggering $265 billion, reflecting a $29 billion increase from the previous year. This makes it one of the wealthiest churches in the world, with resources that extend far beyond traditional religious functions. One of the primary drivers of this immense wealth is the church's vast real estate empire. The LDS Church is one of the largest landowners in the United States, with ownership of millions of acres of agricultural land. It also holds prime commercial and residential properties across major cities globally. These holdings not only provide a steady stream of income, but also increase in value over time, contributing to the church's financial stability and growth. The church's financial reach doesn't stop at real estate. The LDS Church has made savvy investments in various financial markets, holding stocks, bonds, and other financial assets. Its investment portfolio is managed by Ensign Peak Advisors, the church's own investment arm, which oversees billions of dollars in assets. The church's financial diversification into different sectors has proven to be a key strategy in maintaining and growing its wealth. Despite the eye-popping numbers associated with its finances, the LDS Church places a strong emphasis on philanthropy and community support. It directs a portion of its wealth toward humanitarian efforts around the world, particularly in disaster-stricken regions. The church has funded disaster relief operations in the wake of hurricanes, earthquakes, and other natural calamities, providing food, water, shelter, and medical aid to those affected. Moreover, the LDS Church is deeply involved in educational and social initiatives. It runs several charitable organizations focused on improving education, alleviating poverty, and increasing access to health care in underserved communities. For example,
Okay. So the thing about this is the amount of humanitarian and charitable work that the church does in percentage wise is so extremely minute. It is laughable. This $265 billion church will give out a few million. I think it was the horrible flooding that happened in North Carolina. I think the church, with quite a lot of pride, announced that they had delivered 1,200 pallets of water. 1,200 pallets of water. That's it? You have a $265 billion church and you passed out a little bit of water? And the thing that they also do is they count their volunteer work and they give it a monetary value and they include that in their statistics. One of the funniest things that I saw recently was they were working with the Bill Gates Foundation. The church is very clever. They don't want to spend money on the administrative costs of actually having a wing or a section of charitable, separating the charitable giving into a separate business. That costs a lot of money. And so rather than do that, it's cheaper and liability wise, it's safer to just give to other organizations. So they will donate to the Red Cross or they will donate to the Bill Gates. And that leaves them, look, all we did was give them money. That it's a liability cloak that they put on. And so they were working, I believe, with the Bill Gates Foundation in Africa. And they are so proud because they came up with a little plastic bowl and they could give the plastic bowl to these mothers whose children are starving in Africa. And each section of the bowl was separated into protein, starch, and I don't know what the other one was, fat. And then the mothers would know that they needed this much protein, this much starch, and this much fat that they could, and that would solve the world hunger cause. Because these mothers don't have any idea. Oh my gosh, you mean I should not have been giving my starving child in Ethiopia donuts? Like they have donuts? It's ridiculous. But they actually put that out in a news release, and people in the church were applauding it. Oh my gosh, isn't that smart? Yes, give those starving children a little bowl so they know where to put their nothing. They don't have any food. Okay. It's a matter of separating it into little sections in the bowl, but that's the kind of crap that they do. And then they applaud themselves for being so charitable. And it's just a laugh. So and the other thing is there have been reported a lot of non-disclosure agreements that the churches, when they find out about abuse, they will go and say, look, I've been authorized to give you $300,000 to keep this quiet. Let's just make this go away. And they've got so much money, that's what they can do. But I wanted to highlight a case that's in the news right now, and it is absolutely horrific. And it was highlighted on a recent Mormon Stories by John Dehlin, and I wanted to share that with you. Let me go past this introduction a little
Hello,
bit.
everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories. Cases, made aware to bishops, into the church, to their law firm, to protect the church and not necessarily to protect victims. So I think it would be okay to be.
Go back a little bit. These are two amazing lawyers.
Kind of what you do, what your firm does, and
Certainly.
anything else you want to say by way of introduction.
So I'm Ann Andrews, the founding managing partner of Andrews and Thornton. We are a law firm that is, of many things we do, a national law firm. We have cases across the country, but we have focused for many, many years on sexual abuse in many aspects of life. All churches, all organizations, schools, anywhere where we have found predators abusing children, our law firm has been there in the court seeking justice for those victims. And we're joined today by Kimberly Dagonia, and she can tell you about her background, but she and I.
Isn't it sad that they have law firms now that are having to completely centralize their focus on the abuse in different systems, school systems and things like that? So I'm going to fast forward this a little bit. Let me see. Okay.
We will ask what happened. We will determine what happened. The facts will be explored, discovered, and answered under the guidelines of law, which are under penalty of perjury. The church and whoever we subpoena to answer the questions, all the people you've mentioned and people beyond that will have to explain to us and explain to our client and this family what those gaps are and what happened. The why of it will be explained, and it will be all governed by a system of laws of fair play for the plaintiff be able to, in a legal proceeding, understand the facts and develop them to be presented at trial. So we're not there yet.
Sure.
We came here to talk about what we've pled.
Yeah.
And we're happy to listen to any things that
hopefully I'm not overstepping.
Oh, no.
So she's basically trying to get John to not speculate, not talk about why he thinks, and rather just stick to the facts. And she was really good at doing this and just absolutely amazing. So let me see if I can go past. There was a section here. Oh, it's just amazing at the very end.
Consolidation as well.
There are federal cases filed in California. So remember, there's a state court proceeding, and then there's federal cases. So we have cases filed in districts in California that are filed in federal court. We have them in multitude of states.
And this is where I'm just totally clueless. So I know you can file federal or state. Can you file both state and federal?
No, you want.
Do a better job of having its perpetrators achieve justice and accountability, and also of its victims to be protected better.
And protect the integrity of the culture of a religion of people who have, following in numbers of 5 million in America. I mean, look, most people who know my background, I didn't talk about it very much, but I was one of the principal negotiators of the National Boy Scout bankruptcy settlement that did mandate through a survivors committee that mandated reform within the Boy Scouts, used policies that are now instituted nationwide in youth groups and followed by churches, by youth groups and schools, systematically for the safety of children. We want children to be able to go to programs. We want them to be able to go to camps. We want them, and the Mormon Church has many common things. And a matter of fact, there were 500,000 Boy Scouts that were in Mormon programs at one time. There are very safe, practical systems in place in organizations and churches included that if they chose to follow them, they could be enacted easily. Why they don't is going to be up to them to explain to a jury. If they came to us and said, "And
why they don't?" That is the question. There are so many ways to have these beautiful programs. And by the way, the Mormon Church just chose to pull itself out of the Boy Scout program because there were so many litigations of abuse. The Boy Scout program was practically just, here are your innocent children, pedophiles. Please join us. You will have access to them. And the Mormon Church protected the people because the church is a lay church where they don't pay people. They do what they call it a calling. So they will a bishop will ask a member of the congregation into his office and say, you know what, I've prayed and I got a message from God that you should be the new Boy Scout leader in our ward or congregation. This person could have absolutely no Boy Scout background. He might have a couple of boys in the Boy Scout program. And so that leads him to somehow have the authority and training to be a Boy Scout leader. And so these men with no background checks, absolutely no background checks whatsoever, were called into the Boy Scout program. They're working with these little boys. They're sleeping in tents overnight. They're taking them in remote places. And the abuse and the accusations were astounding. The church just chose to pull out of the Boy Scout program. And then I think they're still trying to settle on these cases. There's been so many cases, and they're trying to just come up with what if we just give you this much money? Will that make it all go away? So that's a little bit about that. So let me go on a little bit.
We'd like to sit down with you, and as part of the resolution of this case, enact policies that we would like to change the way the church operates up to the apostles and quorum levels, and see to it that it has real teeth, and see to it that it has real reporting like the Boy Scouts has now, because of this group that grew out of the bankruptcy formed by my firm and other firms, a coalition of firms that protect youth activities and scouting. That's in their world. It's not, I mean, imagine if something like that were to happen. Imagine if
the church would start taking responsibility for what it's doing and work with professionals like her and change the system. What would happen if the system was changed so that children were safe? And there was a man, his name is Sam Young, who did exactly this. He did not lose his faith in the church, but he wanted to change the system. Please stop allowing older men to meet with 12-year-old little girls and boys behind closed doors. It's not a good idea. And because of his work, he was excommunicated. That's how the church handles it. But I want it so. What this story that John is talking to these lawyers about was a family who had a 14-year-old son who was convicted of sexual abuse and was put on a sex registration. So he had to sign as a sex offender at 14. But when he got to be 18, they were able to expunge his record, and they did everything they could to have all of that news and information kept silent away. There was a bishop that never told anybody about it. So he's going to church. He's working with other kids. He's being around other kids. No one knew that he had a history of being a sexual offender. And so this family, this father had a ladder. He wanted to become an authority, and he was climbing this ladder. So he was made a 70, which in the church is set up with a 3-person presidency, 12 members that are called apostles, and then there are 70s. And these men serve in different areas of the world and in the country, but they are considered like an extension of the apostleship. And so they have authority. They also receive a salary, and it's a very high position to be in. And so he was finally made a 70. Then he was made a mission president. And while he was serving as a mission president in Madrid, Spain, he invited his entire family to come to Spain and spend Christmas. And the church paid for it. The church paid to fly his family to the home, the mansion that they were living in Madrid, completely paid for by the church. The man was receiving a salary. All of his expenses were paid. And while the family was there, this young boy who was now, I think he was older, he might have been 17 or 18, he abused a grandchild. The grandchild was a baby. And so when the father finally found out about it, long story short, he is now suing the church and his parents for keeping this quiet. And so it's a horrible, horrible story, but it's a perfect excuse of trying to use money to make this abuse go away. So I'm not going to share. Let me see if I decide I want. Let me just put this on a little bit.
Help me welcome our dear, dear friends and the center of the story of the Daystar scandal, Jonathan and Susie Lamb.
Susie and I stand here. We never thought we would be here. It's been quite the journey of just being bold to speak the truth and to not be a part of a cover-up. And that's led us to where we are now completely free, not attached to any sort of major institution or any type of controls, to where we're able to be a voice for truth and to be able to stand up against injustice and be a voice for others out there who have been through abuse or been through a difficulty or been part of a culture that encourages people to cover things up.
Of course, God was taking care of us and loving us, but it was trauma, anxiety, fear. And then God shows us Julie Royce. And I don't say that.
This is very hard for me to watch. It's amazing to me to find that these people can keep their faith in these systems that have abused them so severely. But this is another example, just like I was mentioning, of a young couple who are now suing the Daystar system and their parents who were in charge of Daystar for abuse that they were doing, and monetary abuse, sexual abuse, all kinds of abuse. And so the children are even now starting to speak up. So look up Daystar if you want to know more about it. But basically, what I love, and here, ladies, this is what I want to tell you. When I was sitting in the audience, Julie had a panel, and this panel was women that had been abused by, I believe his name is Mike Bickle. He was in another church organization, great authority. And when one of the women spoke up, of course, that led the other ones to say, I can now speak up too. They told their story. They told about the community that had rallied behind them and helped them to bring this all to light. And then Julie turned to the audience and she said, if you have suffered abuse, raise your hand. If you want special prayers for you. And there were quite a few women that raised their hand. And so the neighbors that sat around them in this audience went and put their hands on them, and the audience began to pray for them. Now, again, this is not my jive. I'm not a believer in this, but I loved watching these people care for each other. But what really shook me was the sobbing that came from some of these women. Absolute sobbing because of what they had lived with. And ladies, when I do my show on She Became Visible, I'm going to be talking about health and nutrition. I'm going to be talking about reaching out and doing things that you've always wanted to do. But this broke my heart, mainly because this audience, primarily the demographic, was my demographic. So these are women who had held this secret in their hearts for 20 and 30 years, not thinking that they would be believed, or not thinking that anyone would come to their aid. And it took a modern day generation and the news and the way news is distributed now for these women to see that they can become visible, they can tell their story, and they are getting the support that they've always needed. And that's my point of talking about this today on She Became Visible. So I am urging you to let the little things that I've shown you today, I just want these to be tidbits for you to take into your own search. Google all of these people, the churches, just type in Julie Royce, watch some of her YouTubes, and Daystar and Mike Bickle, and look up these people, look the abuse in the Mormon church. They have a helpline. Over 1,000 a day people call on this helpline. That does not include the people that are not calling, the people that are trying to keep it a secret. So I would highly encourage you to join some of these groups, Google some of these people, listen to these YouTubes, find a system that will support you and help you in your recovery of becoming visible and healthy and taking back your life. So those are my words for you today. I hope this has been inspiring, and I will see you again next week. Please share this. Please like and subscribe. It's so important. And I like to handle and talk about all different subjects that are encouraging for women to stand up and to become visible and to take back their lives. Please share this with others so that they may do the same. Have a great, beautiful Sunday, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.